Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Butcher, and together with my colleague Sue Piper, we're going to be talking about implementing the TEACH methodology in a residential special school in the UK. So our school is Priors Court School. We're the third largest autism charity in the UK, and we deal with young people who really have been excluded from other schools and who are most severely affected by their autism. So we have been set up for 20 years. We were set up by a lady called Dame Stephanie Shirley, who is an amazing woman, has a complete amazing backstory, which I won't talk about now, but if you do get a chance, please do look her up on online. She's got an amazing TED Talk. And she had a son who had autism, and her legacy was to create the school that she would have liked to have sent her son to. So Priors Court is what she created 20 years ago. We started with 2 children and 28 staff, and we now support 95 young people aged 5 to 25, and we have over 600 staff. Nearly all of our pupils are residential and live with us across a 52-week period. We do support families, and we have a parent flat where our families come to stay, and a lot of our young people do go home, but they go home with some support and some structure from us. So we're a unique setting. We're across 52 acres. We have 12 children's homes, 4 young adult homes. We have a school, we have a sports centre, we have a farm, we have horticulture. We're very lucky, we have a whole therapy department. We have speech and language, occupational therapy, we have psychology, psychiatry, nursing, and so we put everything into Priors Court School. Everything a young person with autism could possibly need to support them is there in one place. So who do we support? Our young people are amazing, individual, unique, and I think it's been a fantastic opportunity over the last, yesterday and today, to listen to everybody celebrate the uniqueness of autism. We have, as I said, up to 95 young people aged 5 to 25. At the moment, our youngest is 7, and our oldest is actually up to 25, so we go right across. They must always have a primary diagnosis of autism. We have autism and epilepsy, autism and tuberous sclerosis, autism and ADHD, autism and mental health disorders, autism and Down syndrome, but autism must be the primary diagnosis. And I think being able to specialise in autism really allows us to focus our approach in the way that we need to. Also, we've heard a lot about being across the spectrum. Our young people are at the most severe end of the spectrum, so they are severely disabled by their autism, and they will have associated learning disabilities and challenging behaviour. That challenging behaviour comes in many forms. It can be self-injurious behaviour, it can be aggressive behaviour, it can be non-compliant behaviour, but all of our young people tend to be nearly every education establishment, social care establishment has given up. It was really interesting to hear Emma earlier say that she was told when her son was 1 or 2 to put him in an institution and walk away. Most of our parents have been told that at one time or another about their children. And it is heartbreaking that at that young age, parents are told to give up and stop. And you know, we are here to tell you, do not ever give up, do not ever stop, because our kids make amazing, significant progress across the time they're with us. They achieve things you never thought possible because we don't give up, and I think it's really important. Now, we always operate a waking day curriculum, which means that every minute of the day is seen as a learning opportunity. It doesn't matter if it's in the school or in the home or in the community. It doesn't matter where you are. That is a learning opportunity. And our children's goals are set from the minute they get up to the minute they go to bed. Everybody's an educator of the children. Everybody is there to help them grow and develop. It does mean they require a very high staffing structure. So mainly, nearly all of our children are 1-to-1 or higher for across 15 hours of the day. So from the minute they got up, they've got somebody there supporting them, helping them, teaching life skills, teaching vocational skills, teaching function academics, helping them with their behaviour, helping them with their coping strategies, all the way through until they go to bed. And then we also have waking night staff as well. So there's always that level of support for them. They do need a predictable and safe environment, and we're going to be talking throughout this presentation this morning about structured teaching, which means that there is a predictable routine and a way to really focus their abilities and attentions and use their skills and interests to help them learn and develop. So the TEACH programme. Both myself and Sue have worked with TEACH for about 15 years. We're both advanced consultant trainers. And Priors Court is currently the only place in the UK that regularly offers the 5-day hands-on classroom training. And I think the only place in Europe that's currently doing the level 2 beyond the basics. So we're sort of seen as a TEACH centre of excellence in the UK. But we have adapted it, and we have absorbed TEACH into our prior approach methodology. And Sue will be talking a little bit more about the prior approach later. But I want to talk about some of the key tenets of TEACH. Thinking about the culture of autism. It's really interesting to sort of talk about culture. This is my first visit to India. It's my first visit with my colleagues to India. And it is an amazing place to be. It's a wonderful place, and thank you for making us so welcome. It's been a joy to be here. However, it has been a culture shock. There are very many different things that I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And if we take culture and we just have a think about culture for the minute, culture is a shared understanding, a shared language, a shared way of life, a shared way of being. The way we eat, the way we dress, the way we speak and communicate, that's all down to our cultural roots. And I know autism can't be seen as a true culture, but if we take a little leap of faith and say, well, let's think of the culture of autism, then actually people with autism do have an associated communication, the way they speak, the way they dress, the way they are, there's that core triad there that we would recognise as autism. And if we accept that autism has a culture, then we in this room have to accept that we're cross-cultural interpreters. There was a lovely lady today helping us when myself and Sue were looking at the dinner, the lunch, and she was saying, oh, well, that's so-and-so, and that's that, and that's that, because I didn't know what was there. I didn't know that food. It's not part of my culture. So I had a cross-cultural interpreter to help me pick out my lunch today. That's what we need for people with autism. We are all in this room cross-cultural interpreters. We understand autism, we understand that culture, and we understand the neurotypical world. And our job is to be in between and help the people with autism understand the neurotypical world. And also, probably more importantly, help the neurotypical people understand the culture of autism. Because in that way, we can help break down those barriers. So it's a key tenet of the TEACH programme. Individualisation is also something that we hold very dear in prior approach methodology and the TEACH programme as well. We want to understand that every young person with autism, every person with autism has a unique ability. It's been fantastic over the last 2 days to hear everyone talk about strengths and interests, gifted, what our young people can do, not what they can't do. We have to look at them and say, what are they ready to learn? What are their strengths and interests? What are their emerging skills? And build our education programs around that. I think Matthew yesterday talked about finding the moment to teach. It can be a fleeting moment, but if you find it, you've got it. And you've got to be there ready to respond to that individual need. Structured teaching obviously is an absolute key, and Sue will be going through that in lots of detail the second half of this talk, so I won't touch too much on that. But I think TEACH at its heart looks at how we can offer structure and routine to young people with autism to make the world an understandable place. And if the world is a more understandable place, then by that very nature, hopefully we will get less behaviour. So behavioural strategies are a key part of the TEACH methodology. We want young people to understand both expressively and receptively what's going on. We want to give them a structure to their day. We want them to be able to predict what's happening, go through their day without things coming as a surprise and a shock and being unpredictable. We want them to be able to understand. And if we can do that, if we can offer self-regulation, if young people can understand what's happening and why it's happening and what's going to happen next, then you are going to see less behavioural problems. It's a really good way of being able to predict and set out a whole programme of events that will happen for a young person during their day and give them that surety and certainty of what's going to happen. And I think one of the key points of Teach, which it's been interesting over the last couple of days to hear people talk about what they do, and are they a clinician or a caregiver or a parent or a teacher or a specialist or a scientist or a researcher. I'd like to bring us all back to the generalist model. And Teach talks about the generalist model as being everybody is an educator of young people with autism. Everybody is there to teach. Everybody is there to input and help. Yes, we've all got our specialisms, but at its heart, we don't want to segregate ourselves. We don't want to say, well, I'm just a teacher or I'm just a caregiver. We want everybody to understand that we are all here to help young people with autism. And a Teach methodology really lays that bare. So I would challenge all of you, because I've heard it a lot over the last couple of days in lots of different presentations, the sort of differentiation of people, the hierarchy of people. I think yesterday in the panel discussion, there was this discussion about, well, if I'm the person in the white coat, then I'm not going to be, nobody's going to ask me a question or question why I'm giving this advice. Please question it. Please share. Please understand that to really support people with autism, we must use a generalist model, and we must work with each other in that way. Oh, yep, there we go, sorry. So what does the research tell us? There is some good research on Teach, not enough. Second point there is, what do we need more of? Need more research. But the research tells us that actually for preschool and primary children, there is improvement in communication and in cognition and learning. For adults or young adults with more impaired disabilities, there is good skills functioning improvements using a Teach program. And generally, a lot of the research in Teach talks about actually helping the well-being of the whole family, because Teach isn't about doing something 9 till 3:30 or in a school day. Teach is about the working across the lifespan of a young person with autism. So it's really important to understand that there is good research out there. There's not enough, and there's certainly not enough research done at the more severe end of the spectrum. So there's a lot of research coming out about sort of moderate and high functioning, but those more severely affected by autism and learning disabilities tend to not get research. And obviously that's because it's harder to gain feedback, it's harder to gather the data. And Priors Court itself this year has actually launched a research board so that we can start doing our own research. Now, from 20 years of working at Priors Court, from 30 years of working with people with autism, I can tell you my own anecdotal research. The Teach program really, really works. It works phenomenally well. Our kids make huge, huge gains. And I've been lucky enough to map our kids across the whole 20 years of being at the school. A young lady that's recently graduated from us, when she started with us when she was 7 years old, she couldn't communicate. She couldn't use the toilet. She couldn't dress herself. She certainly couldn't sit down and learn anything. She wasn't even ready to do that. 19 years later, she's graduating from Priors Court. She has a job. She has an ability to communicate. She is a calm, controlled young lady who has her whole life ahead of her. And that's what the Teach program can do. That's what the Prior approach can do. And that's what we can all do if we get the right methodology for the right young person. Thank you. Excuse me. I do apologise for my voice. I'm afraid I've got a nasty cold. Just before I hand over to my colleague, I just want to talk about some common misconceptions of Teach. It's something that's often laid at the door of a Teach program, is that it's inflexible, that it's only designed for little children who are going to sit at a desk and work in a little workstation or a little work corral. That's just not the case. Teach is designed across the lifespan of a young person, and certainly when our children and young adults graduate from us at either 19 or at 25, they leave us and we work with their new provider, or whether if they're going home or wherever they're moving on to, and they take their structure with them, they take their scheduling with them, they take their ability to understand and communicate with them. Now, it might become less overt. You know, when you're teaching a 5 or 6 year old, you might have some big pictures or some big photographs or some big objects. And when you're teaching a 25-year-old, you might find that they've got a schedule on their smartphone. So it can become more discreet, but we mustn't take it away. If somebody needs the teach approach or structured teaching to be able to be successful, then that's what they need, and they need it across their lifespan. The other misconceptions laid at teachers' door is that it's isolating, that it shuts kids away, that they go off and work on their own and they don't socially interact. That couldn't be further from the truth. Teach is a huge tool to encourage social interaction, to work out what those levels of proximity are and teach in a structured way so you can move through just being socially in social approximation to social reciprocity if you can work through in a structured way. But you need to do it in the appropriate way. It is not isolating. We teach flexibility, we teach choice, but within a structured program. So it's very important that we sort of dispel some of these myths of teach, because having worked in autism for 30 years and the last 20 years specialising in the teach approach, it is an amazing system to be able to use with these young people and see them fly, see them develop, and see them grow. I'm going to hand over to Sue now, who's going to talk a little bit more in depth about structured teaching. Do my watch.
Okay, good afternoon, thank you. Am I doing the classic? That's it. Okay, so many of the principles of teach we've used and developed our own approach, and actually the easiest thing for us to do was to create a practitioner's handbook, which we did do. It comes with a whole training package, and what this enables us to do is to ensure that we use the principles of any best practice that we've learned over the 20 years. Now, I'm only going to be talking about some of the key things that are the teach methodology, the physical structure, the schedules, the work activity, and the visual structure. But that doesn't mean that the other elements are not important. And what's key about the prior approach is that actually we've put together and learn about best practice, and I say learn because we all learn every single day, and actually pulling out the fact that we use the Waking Day curriculum, and I know Sarah's spoken about it, and as someone that comes from an education background, I learn more and more about how every moment of a person's day who has autism, they need to learn from the moment they wake up till the moment they go to sleep. Learning programs are always about, we need to learn to wash, we need to learn to put on the correct shoes, we need to learn to dress appropriately, and actually a lot of our programs are all around that and learning through the day. We also, you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism, and we have to individualise our program around each young person. So that's the whole set of things that we do, but for every young person we take different elements and different amounts of those elements. So somebody might require a lot of exercise breaks within their day, and this is just one example, and therefore after 15 minutes of learning they need to carry out an exercise program because they need to be out and about so that they can refocus and then carry on with their day. Somebody else might require some sensory work in between everything else that they're learning. So we take the Waking Day and we take the prior approach and we work it around the young person. What we see the prior approach as is a toolkit for life. These are the tools we're going to teach you, and they're to help you later on in life to overcome the barriers that we so often see our young people with autism having to overcome. And one of the key things that's behind everything that we teach and everything that we want the young people to learn is the meaning and purpose of what we're teaching. Is it going to lead later on in life to more independence? Is it going to lead towards a vocational job and to be able to live by oneself or with less adult help? Because we've heard the ratios of staff help. We need to put in that intervention so that the young people can live a more independent life. I'm not saying most independent, but a more independent life by teaching the skills. So a little bit about the principles, and I'm really just going to touch on them, and as my colleagues will know, I could probably talk for a week about many of these areas, and I won't be able to. So the teach methodology about the structure and organisation that people with autism require to just better understand the world. And by better understanding the world, we try and decrease that anxiety, and I don't need to tell you that by increasing anxiety, we're clearly helping a young person access learning more, and we're reducing behaviours. So if I work from left to right, as is a very, very key teach method, I'll just look at the physical structure. It's about organising an area. I've given you an example there of a learning environment. It could be any environment. It could be a home environment. But it's all about keeping things distraction-free. It's about keeping the area clear. The materials that are appropriate for that activity are out, the rest are away. They have meaning, they have purpose, and we know what it's all about. And also recognising that we have to individualise different learning areas for different young people. Then I move on to scheduling. Schedules tell a young person with autism where they need to go. So when they wake up in a morning, they are told, and again, I was really pleased to hear Temple Grandin this morning say, young people with autism have a poor working memory. This facilitates that and helps them to organise it. I know if I walked into work in the morning and forgotten my diary or no reminder of what I was doing, there is an element of me that would get quite anxious. I don't hold it all, and we can't expect our young people to. So it helps them to sequence the day, tells them where to go, and is it at a level that they understand, at a level that's correct for the individual. And I've got some examples of all the different individual ways in a moment. Then the work activity system, which comes hand in hand with a schedule. So a schedule might tell you where you're going. You might be going to the office. When you get to the office, what have you got to do there? Well, we could say you've got to work for half an hour, you've got to do lots of activities, and we might never tell a young person with autism that, but actually through a visual, through a written word, we can actually tell them that they have 3 things to do. In this case, they're going to work on the guillotine, they're going to laminate, and they're going to shred. Then they're going to check their schedule again. So we're telling them, and we're setting out some guidance to let them know they're completing 3 activities. They can see what the activities are, they can see that they will finish, and then they will be going back to their schedule. Okay, so that's the work activity system telling us what to do. And then we have the visual structure that actually is about the instructions themselves. So these instructions complement the fact that we're asking a young person to do some shredding. So it's telling them how much shredding they have to do, but it's telling them how to go about doing that. Now, we use visual structure by giving an instruction, and actually sometimes it's about listing that instruction. We help by organising materials. There's no point asking someone to do an activity if actually the materials aren't anywhere around and they have to spend ages looking for those. And then we try and add clarity by putting an icon in, by putting a photo in, by underlining something that's of real importance, or using colour clarity. Okay, so I'll go into a little more detail on some of those principles. So here we have visual structure. You'll notice the icons down the right-hand side. They're the icons that we use just to remind our teams of some of the key things we want to think about with regards to visual structure. In this picture, I'm just going to pull out a few key elements. Like I said, this is a learning area. You'll see that there's some independent work area along the very back versus some areas where we can work as groups, because it will be different for every young person. It's low distraction. The information that is up is useful information to people. On the very right-hand side, there's a little area where people might chill or relax or have a little bit of time out if that's what they would like or need. The amount of materials out are minimal. We have key pieces of labelling or visual instruction that just tell young people the rules or what we've got to do next, or how you can ask for help. The arrangements of the furniture is really key. You know, making sure the chairs face the area that you actually want the young people to pay attention to. If I'm sitting at an independent table and I actually find it really difficult to concentrate, I'm not going to be facing into the room. I might be very distracted by the window and all the cars going by. So just by putting down a blind, which is on the left-hand side, that stops me looking out and stops me being as distracted. And also just recognising individual difference. If I get very distracted by sensory things, then I'm not going to be put by the door where lots of people travel through, or next to the phone that might be ringing constantly. So it's taking into account everything that the young people need, both as a group where we'd have about 6 or 7 young people and 6 or 7 adults within this area, and also what will work for a group and for the individual. Thank you. So going on to the information about scheduling. Scheduling, telling a young person where to go. And again, I will repeat, that needs to be in every area of their learning, right from their bedroom to any place that they're travelling through. Now, these schedules, I've tried to demonstrate to you all the different types of scheduling. So in the left-hand corner, this young person just requires one symbol because that's enough for them. They can't cope with any more information. It's living in the here and now. I need to know, I need to go to group, and that's what that says for that young person. The second one along, so the middle, so that looking at the middle, the long schedule, it's a photo schedule, and that tells a young person about the activities they'll be doing over the next hour, really. So from the moment they get into school until the moment they have a break or snack, and it's telling them all the different areas that they'll be going to carry out their learning. That really helps a young person, to reiterate what Sarah said, to actually work out when the things that are there that they like. You can also bring in flexibility and choice within these schedules, but like I said, that's another complex area, and I'm not being given the time to talk about that, so I won't be. And then again, it might be that we need a travelling schedule, so the one on the right, where a person can actually take that with them and go to all the different areas that they might be carrying out an activity, especially in an environment like ours where it's a 52 acres, you could be in any place. The length of the schedule is really important. It's really important for it to be individualised for each young person, and it's about them being able to read the information, be able to follow it. Then we have the written schedule, which again highlights some of the key things. It might be that I've been told to go to the computer area, but actually when I go to the computer area this time, it's because I'm going to be tidying or cleaning the area. So sometimes we add a little bit of clarity to that. The work activity system, I've put 2 examples here. I've put an example of a learning environment, which is on the left-hand side, where the work activity system on the desk actually relates to the work that's in the left-hand side by the drawers, and therefore the young person can match the orange square to the desk, to the piece of work, carry out the work, and then complete the finish. As you can see, that it's able to answer the questions again. I have 3 activities to do. I know I'm working through them because I'm matching and I'm following the tasks within the drawers, and then I know I've got to check my schedule when I've finished. Again, Sarah and I have discussed how important it is that we use work activity systems in areas such as the bathroom. So we remind a young person that actually you need to go to the toilet, you need to wash, you need to wash under your arms, you need to put deodorant on, you need to get dressed. A lot of the time, many of our young people just struggle to sequence those simple events that we take for granted. And by having a work activity system, we are prompting, we are helping, and we're not being the adult to constantly remind them as to what they've got to do. We need the independence, and the independence can come through the visuals that we offer them. Visual information, wanted to give you another example. This is in a young person's bedroom. It could be a teenage bedroom. I think I could do with this with my teenage son. But what it's telling them is that actually you sort your clothes, light, darks, bedding and towels. And actually we've made that so clear. We've used writing, we've used icons, we've put clear colour clarity. Just something simple by using colourful bins that match the actual instruction above helps a young person just to take more note of everything. And we have to teach that, but we're drawing their attention and using their key skills. If colour is a key skill, then that's what we use to help colour highlight. And then finally, obviously, its impact. What's the impact of putting all these principles of teach in place? Well, what it enables us to do is to actually help the young person to access the learning that we want them to take place in, as Sarah said, with a crossed interpreter. And what we need to do is reduce the behaviours. So the right-hand diagram, where their behaviours were really high when we first took this young person, is we want those to reduce. Well, they've reduced quite rapidly because the anxiety's gone down and this young person understands what is expected of them through the structure. The other things that I thought were really important to show you was the reading and writing and the amount of learning that has gone on over a period of time. Well, this young person suddenly realised that by taking note of their schedule, reading their schedule, that life made sense to him. And then we started to understand that he had some skills, even if to follow the words or the icons, but he was reading that information. Writing, a young man who doesn't speak, but actually he started to, again, going back to what other people have discussed, he used an iPad to actually write sentences through an app that he was using. And we suddenly realised he was more than capable of writing down his words and telling us what it was he required at that moment in time. And then at the very bottom, the other graph is all about the daily living skills and the programme he's following. He needs to learn to brush his teeth if he's going to get a job. He needs to learn to get dressed if he's going to work. He needs to be able to gain skills in some of those absolute key areas. And they're all our programs. And I don't know whether you can see it, but it's everything from brushing teeth to dressing to washing your face to wearing deodorant to going to the toilet. All those things that are absolutely key that sometimes we take for granted. Well, that's his program of learning. There's one red mark, and I had to look into that before I came here because it means he's regressed in an area. He was a teenager. He regressed in breakfast because he wouldn't get up in the morning, so he stopped gaining as many skills. Made me smile, but also made me realise that we have to be really careful that our young people don't regress and that actually we keep going. I'm delighted to see that progress in a young person, but actually it's about, as I keep saying, the learning across his entire day and the structure that we put in place to help him understand what we're asking of him, making him feel more reassured and less anxious. That's just some references that we wanted to put up there, but really just want to thank you all very much for listening and thank you for letting us be a part of this wonderful conference. Thank you.